Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So starting our afternoon of practice, and if you, we've done a bunch of day longs together, so you're probably figuring out I tend to do things in a particular way. Like I set the stage in the morning, give you the theme, like get the ball rolling, get the ideas going, and usually the part that is suffering we do straight up front, because that's the Theravada way, right? We start with what is the problem? What are the obstructions? What are we working with? As a wonderful way of directing the mind, of shaping the mind, of giving us a motivation. Yeah. We're not doing this so that we can feel better. We're doing this so that we can be better, so that we can be free. Yeah. This is not just a pleasant little exercise that we're going to do to keep up a healthy diet of mental activities. This is us trying to find a way to be human being without being miserable. Yeah. So we start by acknowledging that just that the change is part of our life, but that it does cause problems. Yeah. And a lot of that just comes from our relationship to it. And that we can cultivate new ways of being, new ways of orienting the mind. And suddenly that thing that we thought was guaranteed, was absolutely part of our experience, is not there anymore. Yeah. It turns out it was conditioned. The reason this is so like, wow, the Buddha, oh, this is so wonderful, so amazing, is because the things that we have to let go of to have this experience of freedom are the very things that we were trying to hold on to because we thought they made us happy. Our sense of self, our sense of worth, our sense of control, our sense of responsibility, our sense of comfort and stability and security. All of these things, that's what we hold on to, right? That's what we use to give us a sense that everything is right in the world. And then the Buddha says, well, why don't we cultivate this little meditation where those are the very things that drop away. Yeah. And we're just left standing there kind of naked and, in the middle of nowhere, not knowing what's going to happen next. And if we can be okay in that scenario, we're golden. We'll always be okay. There's nothing more that can be taken from us, right? And that is the definition of freedom. If your freedom is dependent on something, is conditioned by something, then you are not really free. Yeah. If your happiness is dependent on something, then your happiness can be taken from you at any moment. Because that is the nature of conditioned things. They arise and they cease. They are not something that can be guaranteed or held onto or secure. So that's where we start things. And then in the afternoon, as we're all a little sleepy, we had a big meal, and we've been sitting and walking and doing different. Now we want to loosen it up a little and actually move to the part of the path, the part of right effort, where we have to cultivate like how we really want to abide in this. And this is where we move towards embracing the change and kind of appreciating that what we started by cultivating in the morning, this anicca sanya, this perception of fluidity in the mind. This is our mind, it's that same mind that compares and wants and is averse to and ignores and does all these things. It's the very same mind, but that we moved it into a state where it recognizes the things are coming, going, arising, and ceasing, and it just kind of it goes hands off, and it says, well, what is this? And it's very funny that when it moves into the out of that, what does this mean? Where am I? What do I have? And it moves into the just like, oh, hey, this kind of reflective, investigative. This is different. What is this? That mind state. There's no suffering there. There's actually no self there. You're too busy actually looking at the thing in front of you to suffer over it, to think, oh, this is not quite as good as the thing I used to have, or wow, this is so cool. This is unlike anything I've ever had before. We put all that aside and we just say, wow, this is different. And whether it's good or bad, pleasant, unpleasant, even if it's something we've seen for every day for the last decade, suddenly we're seeing it as it is right in front of us because it's different. I've never really just stopped and looked at this thing. And this is bringing us into the present moment. And now there is this vein in Theravada. It says, I want to address what came up, that of like paying attention to sensations in the body and kind of getting into this perspective of seeing things as they arise and cease. And this is good. Yeah, we do this for developing vipassana or clear seeing, right? We want to be able to develop the wisdom that sees things arising and ceasing. And we want to have that understanding that that's actually what is happening. But in a way, if we set this up as our goal, it can very quietly but very insidiously move us into a state of mind where we're expecting things to change. Yeah, we're expecting things to arise and cease. And that if we really look at our experience, a lot of things are not doing that very quickly, like not quickly enough to keep our attention. That's the point. If we need things to be off on, off on, off on, in order to feel like we are doing this, to feel like we are reflecting on impermanence, then where are we going to look? We're going to look to the places we probably shouldn't. We're going to look to our mental chatter, or we're going to look to the nervous electrical energy of our nervous system. We're going to look to the feelings, the parasympathetic chemical feelings in our belly. You know, look to these things that are really erratic by nature. And I like to suggest, no, those are the kind of things we really don't want to pay attention to. The Buddha, that doesn't say necessarily like never pay attention to that. If we're falling asleep, then yes, pay attention to the little tingly sensations in your hand. It might help wake you up. But if you're restless, that's going in the wrong direction. And I think for most of us, we don't need more arising and ceasing. We just need more attention. And having things be like the pictures on the television that are constantly changing perspective, and this scene to that scene, to this character, to that character, witty, witty, witty. It catches your attention, but it doesn't bring you peace and stability. Yeah. This is not the kind of reflection on impermanence that we want. It's not the reflection on chaos. That when what we're developing, we want to embrace this experience, but intentionally setting this up, this is simply a mental framework. It is a sanya, yeah? So it's like a window on the world. We're getting our mind into a place that will work in a particular way. As far as sanyas go, as far as mental standpoints or perspectives go, this is like one of the best ones. Because it is the one that is fundamentally based on look, things are always changing, so I shouldn't grab them. Yeah. It's sort of like the mind state we should move into when we're standing on the edge of a cliff. It's like, oh, that's very interesting, but don't lean forward. Or we're near a hot stove and are like, oh, I want to grab that, but I know I shouldn't. Yeah. We start, as we did in the morning, just like noting that the mind wants to compare. It wants to grab, it wants to know, it wants to say, what is this? What is this? What is this? And it wants to look into the past or wants to speculate into the future to figure out what this thing is in the present moment, as though it will still be that in a minute. Instead, we're going to relax back into this sanya that, oh, this is different. Yeah. That this is not the same. This is not in any way related to our past. This is not necessarily going to be there in the future. So we don't need to figure this out so that we're ready for it in the future, because it very well might not be there, but it is here in the present moment. Yeah. So we are going from trying to know things to experiencing things. And when we're experiencing things, we just have the thing that's in front of us. And that is actually the experience of impermanence. Yeah. What is we don't need the thing to change in front of us, because simply by virtue of us not grasping it, we haven't made an object of it. So there's nothing that needs to be broken. There's nothing that needs to change. There's nothing that needs to arise and cease. Yeah. We're letting the thing be itself. And we're noting just how that's a constantly evolving phenomena. And it doesn't have to do it in front of our faces. You know, it's already different. Yeah. This very idea of, oh, hey, this is different, has us looking at it. And as we're looking at it, we're not putting anything solid or stable onto it. Yeah. It's such, in some ways, this is the ultimate Buddhist superpower. Yeah. We've talked about like the Zen farmer, right? You know, who can say whether this is good or bad, right? When we really cultivate this practice, the wisdom, we know things are arising and ceasing. We know things are other than the way that we tend to perceive them. Then we stop objectifying things. We stop saying, I know what this is. And we're like, who knows? Yeah. And that it's just like Ajahn Chah's often quoted, even it's on t-shirts and stuff. It's like impermanence, knowing impermanence is like seeing this cup and knowing it's already broken. Yeah. And it's very cliche, right? You know, every tea store you go, it's like, oh, the tea set is already broken. But if you were to push it off onto the floor, they'd be like, well, you're going to pay for that nonetheless. You know, it's already broken, and yet $59.99. So the Dhamma, in a way, is always helping us move into the middle. And this is a particular middle that I think most of us, at least I, but I think probably most of us, don't even realize there is a middle here. And it's just by virtue of the things that we don't talk about. So the middle that I'm talking about is in between two extremes that were really talked a lot more in the Buddhist time, which, funny enough, was also the time of like Socrates and the Greeks. So they were talking about it too, but we've kind of fallen out of the habit of talking about this. And this is the extremes of eternalism and nihilism. So eternalism is looking at our mental experience. Now, if we were to close our eyes and I were to say, okay, well, imagine a meadow. Yeah? And this meadow is filled with grass. And maybe there's some flowers and there's some trees in the distance. And there's sun. And yeah, maybe a little pond or something. Yeah. Okay. And now we step back from that. And if we were to take a poll, or we were to give everybody watercolors, you would all paint a different scene. right? Because I mean, there would be similarities, but I said grass, I said flowers, I said trees, I said pond, I said sun. But some of you would draw it at sunset, and some of you would draw it at high noon, and some of you would draw like little golf course kind of grass, and some of you would draw like, eyebrow height, swaying, wheat kind of grass. And some of you would do a mountain lake that's reflecting the sky, and some of you would do a puddle, like the kind that's fun to splash in harmlessly. And this is our mental landscape. And it's just to point out from the eternalism perspective, nothing can be gained and nothing can be lost. The mind is the creator of all things. Yeah, things exist in the mind. So what you all did as I said those things was you created a universe. You created a little world. And the longer you spend on it and the more clear and calm your mind is, the more detailed it will be. Yeah. And it is the same process by which we apperceive the world. If you're running past a meadow at full speed, it will be a very shallow experience of that meadow, right? If you say you're being chased by a bear, you'll be like, oh, look, that's very pretty. But you'll keep running. Yeah. But if you were to go to that meadow and you were to sit down and you were to spend an hour there, you would have a very deep and very detailed, very nuanced and textured experience of that meadow. So it is to say, our mental experience is the same way. Like we create reality in the mind. And there is nothing anywhere to say that the reality that we're creating in our mind is any different from our physical reality, from the reality of the five senses. In some ways, we can even say it's a bit better because it's usually more detailed, more fluid, more beautiful, just by virtue of that almost godlike ability to create and manipulate and experience it in the moment. And so this idea is that all things already exist and that because the mind is creating them, they can't be lost. This is the idea of eternalism, is that anything that you experience is still there, yeah, still going. And it's just that's so you can't be harmed. And there's a truth to this, right? The mind cannot be harmed. The mind can't really lose things in that way because it can always create new ones. The idea of nihilism is a lot like our physical reality, but it's starting from the perspective that the physical reality is really all that we have. That consciousness is arising from physical reality, it's arising in the body, and that it dies with the physical body. And that when something is destroyed in the physical world, it's gone forever. Yeah. So when something changes, it's totally, we will never be seen again. And that this perspective is also kind of true. Like I've got my begging bowl behind me, and if I were to leave it out in the elements and it were to get destroyed, I couldn't, come back a little while later and gather up the pieces and kind of press them back together, and it would turn back into a begging bowl. That's not the way it works here on Earth. Yeah. So things are getting destroyed. There is loss. Yeah. And once something is gone, you never get it back. And that is the physical reality of stuff. There is a truth to that. What this anicca sanya is allowing us to do is to set a middle way beyond or between these two extremes. Between eternalism, nothing can be gained and nothing can be lost, and nihilism, you've got to hold on to the things that you've got because once they're gone, they're gone. Yeah? It's letting us chart this course where, yes, the mind cannot be harmed. It doesn't have to suffer over loss. But at the same time, physical reality is different, is changing, is never going to go back to the way it was, the way we remember. The physical world is constantly evolving around us, but that this doesn't have to be a source of suffering. The loss is really more of a change of state. The only thing that is being lost is our idea of what was there. And that if we don't make that idea to begin with, then nothing is actually lost. And that's all to kind of set the stage for looking at how this particular anicca sanya gives us the ability to do things that we're not normally able to do with our mind. And that without the right context, this would it would seem pointless, right? You'd be like, okay, that's funny, but I've still got to pay the bills. Or that's great, but I've got a family. I've still got to cook dinner. Yeah. But that when we really start to look at it and understand this is a meditation that once cultivated gives us the ability to pull out this power, this ability when we really need it. So let's do a little example. Yeah. Okay. So we've been cultivating this anicca sanya. Take a minute and see if you can get back to any experience of it that you had. So different. Yeah. Things are different. These are not better, not worse. Get back to that sense that it's almost like you've never been in this room before. And it's a brand new chair. Yeah. And that if you were to meet somebody on the road, you'd be meeting them for the first time. Yeah. Because they're different. They've changed. They've changed in the time that you weren't like watching them like a hawk. And how does that feel? Does that feel, it feels lighter, right? Looser, freer. What is this? If this were the first time I had ever been in this room, then I wouldn't immediately assume I knew anything about it. I'd be looking, I'd be examining, I'd be adapting, I'd be feeling my way through things. And then getting the somatic sense of that. Isn't that in an interesting way more pleasant? Isn't that in an interesting way? Doesn't that have less suffering? Yeah. You think, oh, this darn computer, this darn mouse, this is the same thing. Look, it's all crusty and old, and it's got dust on it, and the battery's going dead. Or we can say, oh, hey, look, it's one of these here, and one of these here, and oh, this is different. And this is what I'm saying. We're using the mind that we've got. This is not about objective reality, but once we move into this perspective, we realize, oh, okay, it's encouraging a sort of awareness and a present moment awareness by virtue of me being in this state of mind. Now we're going to take it a bit further. I'm going to imagine now in this state that we can change. And pick a hand, one of your hands, or one of your feet, just one of them. And imagine what it'd be like if you lost that one. And you don't have to get detailed. You don't have to say you lose it in this particular accident and this happens or that happens. Just you wake up one morning and clearly it's gone. In a clean way. Like, it's all somebody tied it up for you and sewed off the end. And so just pick one. Yeah. And now see if you can take that perspective, use that mantra and say, well, this is different, right? Huh, this is different. Just one hand. Wow. Huh. I used to, oh, but this is different. Okay. Now see if you get that sense of, well, okay, How will I do this? How will I do this? How will I open a jar of ketchup? Well, if you chose a hand, then you're gonna obviously have to get it in your armpit or something, or hire hire a ketchup opener to come by at dinner time every night. Or you choose a foot, yeah. You're gonna have to get a little. You're gonna have to take the bedpost and screw it off and stick it down there so you've got something to walk on. Yeah, you don't want to be a foot short. But now this is what in this particular mind state, this is anicca sanya. This is a recognition of change can be just, oh, this is different. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a problem. So instead of saying like, oh, I've lost something, I can't go back to the way it was. It's like nothing will ever be the same. But saying, well, okay, how will I put on my belt without a hand? Because I was thinking about this yesterday. Monks, we've got a very funny little belt. It's basically just a strap with two tassels on the end. And it's the only thing that holds all of this on our body. And I'm thinking like, wow, I think I need two hands. But then if you think about it for a while, well, what if you just didn't have it? What if this is different now? It's not like it was. It's not like you've gotten used to it, but different doesn't have to be a problem. What if you just approached it like, okay, how do I get this on here now without a hand? A funny story. In high school, I signed up for a typing class. You sign up for all your courses and you show up, at the beginning of the semester for that class. And it was typing, touch typing. Before people were taught this, basically as soon as they could talk, back when you had to learn how to type because it was like an office skill that might get you a job. And I showed up the first day of the class, and the teacher uh, only had one hand. The other arm was yeah, about a foot short, and he was born that way. You see the bone, and it was oddly shaped. It didn't come to the wrist. It stopped much shorter. And we're like, you're our typing teacher? And he said, yeah, yeah. So let's open the books, and I'll teach you. And obviously it came up during the course of the class. um, wouldn't it make a lot more sense for the person teaching us to type with both hands to have two hands? And to him, no. You will, and he said when he showed up to apply for the job, the principal of the school said the exact same thing. It's like, is this a joke? And he said, I guarantee you will never find anybody who has worked so hard to learn how to type as long as you look. Yeah, because it was the truth. He had to work twice as hard as anybody else to do the same activity. But because of that, he was really good at it. And he could really explain the process of learning the skill because he didn't have anything that he took for granted. So what we're using our mind for is just to imagine a scenario where things are different. And isn't it interesting that with our mind in this anicca sanya, we can do that, right? We're like, oh yeah, it'd be wow, what would that be like to not have one hand or to not have one foot? And now let's just imagine that you're in a different body completely. Yeah. So if you're short, maybe you're tall. If you're tall, maybe you're short. Man, woman, light skin, dark skin, long hair, short hair, anything. Just pick anything because this is on the mental side of things. You can't hurt yourself from imagining, right? This is different. But is it the end of the world different? Or is it just different? I mean, you'll have to buy it, a different size of jacket. Maybe it means you'll be able to do something that you couldn't do before, or not do something that you could. But just really fundamentally, it's just different, right? You'd still eat pretty much the same food, still sit in chairs pretty much the same way, probably have very similar hobbies. Maybe, just maybe, as you think about this, you would realize that this is a fantastic opportunity to change some things that have been getting stale. Oh, I've suddenly got this young athletic body, or oh, suddenly I'm a woman. I guess it'd be okay for me to go shopping in that one store, and I wouldn't get chased out. Maybe wow, you realize that uh, people would look at me different or react to me different, or maybe I could finally, put the steering wheel in down low and be able to really just enjoy seeing over the dashboard in the car, which is otherwise so high up. And now this is an example of anicca sanya being applied to just a hypothetical. But maybe already during the course of the day, or maybe you can think of a recent example, you've been faced with something changing. You wake up one morning and it's cold when it wasn't cold before that. Whereas somebody leaves, somebody goes to college, or somebody comes back from traveling abroad. Something you were doing doesn't work anymore. You get a letter in the mail that says you're no longer on such and such health plan. Figure it out. Yeah. Something has changed. Now, the question is, what was the reaction? What came up? And why did that come up? So we're looking at causes and effects. If we hadn't been cultivating that perspective of, oh, look at this, this is different, huh? Things will be different now. Okay, let's see how this works. Then maybe we reacted very strongly, right? Ah, here we go again. Oh no, I can't believe this happened. Why does this always happen? Yeah, now, they're always doing this to me. Or oh, this is fantastic. Oh, thank goodness. That was such a mess before, but now this will fix everything, I'm sure. Warning, warning, right? Whenever we have this will work for sure. Finally got it right. Yeah. And that's the difference. And it's all about this different sanya. Yeah. And so we're not even setting ourselves up where we need things to be changing dynamically, but we can set the mind in this particular state where those things happening are not a problem, where they are just an opportunity to adjust. And as I said before, imagining yourself in this room for the first time, yeah, imagining yourself not having a lot of baggage, going out to your car and being like, oh, this is different, and getting in is like, huh, this is different. What is this like? Oh, I guess I'm driving a car now. Yeah, interesting. Let's see how this runs today. Yeah. Instead of saying, oh no, here we go, it's sputtering again. It must be the brakes. It must be the oil. It must be the spark plug. There's always those things. But saying, oh, let's see what this is. What could this mean? This is different. Yeah. And that one has suffering, one has resistance, one has grumbling and griping, and the other has none of that. One has a lot of self and this being a problem, and one has this is just the way things are. And so embracing change is more a function of being able to move into the next state. And that is what we are trying to set the mind up for. If it's not in a place of making objects and taking stand on things and even ignoring things and assuming they're always going to be there, if it's more in the state of, okay, well, let's see, wow, this is the way things are going right now. Well, then when something actually does change, our first response will be, oh, this is different. It will be that sort of pleasant, joyful, playful sense of, oh, how fascinating. Now I can really, let's look at that. Yeah. Because I don't know anything about this. And so just like Asubha, just like metta, just like breath meditation, just like satipatthana, just like all the other meditations we might be able to cultivate, this leads us in the same direction of relaxation and samadhi and a sense of present moment awareness. And it's not based on having to use our wisdom constantly, of having to look like, is this arising and ceasing? Is this suffering? Is this not self? But rather setting up the mind in a place where that's the default. Yeah. It's like, oh, here we go. I don't know anything about this. Let's see what it's like. Well, there's no self in that. Yeah. There's no permanence in that. There's no suffering in that. And what I invite you to do, if you found the morning to be useful and you actually tried, the mantra different and working with what came up, then in the afternoon, you might give this a try from time to time. Like actually start with, setting up that state of mind and seeing it. Does this feel like that loose kind of like, wow, I'm not even part of this, or it's like it's all just moving on its own. Look, I don't have to do anything. You get into that mind state and then change something. Like hypothetically, obviously, you don't know none of that. The Buddha said monks don't cut things off. The people tried. They tried to make things different and prove that they were not attached, literally not attached. But the Buddha said, look, you don't have to do that. You're cutting off the wrong thing. The attachment is in the mind, yeah? You just take something and mentally experiment with changing it. Yeah? So all of this is, once you get into the depth of the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha was talking about samsara. And the overarching reason for us to want to get out of suffering, as the Buddha is saying, is we have always been doing this. We have always been suffering over the way things that have been changing, but that they've always been changing. And the Buddha describes a scenario where you are born and you grow up and you live and you die, and then you're born in a completely different place, in a completely different scenario. And you take it seriously and you grow up and you live your life, and then you die, and then you're born in a completely different scenario. The Buddha is looking out and he was saying that things are already changing all the time. Yeah, but we're just not set up mentally to be able to really roll with it. And then this is simply a matter of training. Yeah. If because we don't see the reason often, right? Those things that are not changing in our life. Our house is staying the same. Our cat is basically staying the same. Our iPad is the same, unless we forget to turn off the automatic updates. And then one day we wake up and it's very different. And we didn't do that. But for the most part, it's the same. Yeah. But this is just an illusion. Yeah. If we keep cultivating that mind state, that when something does substantially change, then we're not prepared. Yeah. So during the afternoon, maybe, you find yourself, you look at your phone and it's like, you've got a brand new iPhone and you're like, well, what if it were an old Android phone? Yeah. And just watch that if your mind is in the right place, then it's like, it probably still make phone calls. Yeah, I could still use that. Yeah, I'm sure. You should be fine. Do all the same things. And it's like, wow. But the last time I dropped my phone on the ground and it landed screen down on some rocks, that was not the place where my mind was at. It was not the, oh, this will be fine. It was like, oh my God, this is the end of the world. That was expensive and irreplaceable. But now if we put our mind in the middle, it really can just be like, okay, yeah, this is not a problem. And so change something. We go out in the car, it's a different car. Yeah. Or maybe somebody we borrow somebody else's car. Maybe we don't even have a car. And maybe we only have a bike. Would we still be able to solve many of the problems that are the basic essential problems of being a human being? Food, shelter, clothing, medicine. Would we still be able to solve those problems? And probably, if our mind is in the right place, we'd be like, yeah. Maybe we'd even be like, whew, guess I don't have to pay the insurance anymore. This is great. Great. This will be a huge relief. Yeah. You might see, this is coming from a wandering monastic. If you really take this as far as it can go, then you have that mind state of the pilgrim, the wanderer, who is living, as the Buddha was describing, as like this samsara literally means wandering. It's the endless wandering. And it's like when you really lean into it, it's funny, you're still in samsara. You're still wandering through this endless progression of changes, yeah, in this very life. But the suffering is gone. The pilgrim has no baggage. Yeah. They're walking, they wake up and they just walk in whatever direction they want. And they keep going as long as they want. And when they're tired, they lay down. Yeah. They eat what's given to them. They don't grab things. They don't demand that things stay the same. Civilizations rise and fall around them. And they just like, oh, look at that. Huh? Who can say if this is good or bad, right? Who can say? Who can say? So it gives I'll be happy to hear everybody comes up with. Yeah, there's always something you can try imagining changing. Yeah, and maybe surprise yourself. Yeah, was that how the mind can be like, oh, that's funny. Yeah. So we'll begin our afternoon session, and maybe yeah, we'll just open up. We've got a little over 2 hours, so sit and walk as you find appropriate. Maybe we'll take a 10-minute break, and then on the half hours, if that's a useful format for people, just decide whether you want to sit or walk on the half hour. And then anybody who's still around at 5 Eastern, I'll come back and we'll have a little chat.